And now for a collection of some of the horror short stories that I have written. I do hope that you enjoy this collage of nonsense. Some of these I have written to be metaphors for different things. Other things just had cool, spooky monsters that I thought were neat and I came up with. So, don't worry about it. Past that, I'll read some teasers for future spooky stories that I'm working on. If you care to listen to it, that'll be at the end, as well as the names of these future stories. Anyways, without further ado, here we go. Paranoia. You're walking alone. It's dark, and there isn't anybody around you. It's a foggy night. Is there something behind you? No, there couldn't be. It's 1:30 in the morning. But why is it you hear something behind you? It could have been the wind. But wouldn't you have felt that? It could have been an animal knocking something over. But is the animal still there? You want to look behind you, but you're scared of what you'll see. Scared that it isn't an animal. Scared it's a man waiting for you to notice him, only for him to strike. Scared that it might be a creature from the darkest depths of your nightmares. Thinking of all these things, you start to pick up the pace. You start to worry that whatever might hypothetically be behind you is frustrated that you're moving faster. But then you hear something else behind you, closer this time. Closer than it should be. Paranoia? Maybe. Maybe you're so scared that you're hearing things. Hearing something that initially scared you and led you down this path of fright. All you want is to reach an area of town with lights. Maybe the main road. If there are lights, it is more likely there will be cars. If anyone saw you, they would stop, right? They would help? You can't be sure. While crossing the road, you make sure to go diagonally so you don't see behind you. Now, the longer you worry about what you'll see, the more frightened of what will be there you are. You pick up the pace even more just to make it to the sidewalk, and you trip on the curb. On the ground you don't know, on a road you shouldn't be on, you feel the heat behind your neck. More paranoia? Maybe your body is in such a frenzy that it worked up a fight or flight response. You're too scared to stand. You've been on the ground long enough for whatever you could have been outpacing to have caught up. As you stand, you realize you hit the ground hard. You hurt. It hurts. Your breathing has gotten sporadic now. In danger of hyperventilating, you walk and suddenly you stop. Something stops you. And as you see the light of the road, it all goes black. You shouldn't have walked down this road. And now you aren't sure if you'll be fine to regret it. You fall, and it's over. Rehab. You wake up in a prison cell. The cell door is open. You walk through wondering what happened. You don't remember anything before the cell, but you know you had a life. You remember your name, and maybe the name of some friends. Dave, Eric, Agnes? Maybe another. What was their name? Where are they? Where are you? The prison is empty. No guards, no prisoners, no windows. The only locked doors are the ones that lead to areas for guards. As far as you can see, there aren't any. You can see the clock in some of the rooms. It's 4 p.m. Having explored the entire prison, there isn't anything. You return to your cell, and something is different. There is a clock on the wall. 6 p.m. A tray of food is in your cell, but more importantly, you hear footsteps. Someone is here, and from the sounds of the walking, they might be injured. It sounded staggered, almost like one of the feet was dragging, but you can't see them anywhere. You find the area where the sound is coming from, but you can't see anything, and you aren't running into anything. They seem to be walking to the room where you can speak to guests. You hear a voice coming from a phone. Hello? 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 It says in a repeating voice. You pick up the phone. You can't hear the footsteps anymore. Who is this? You ask in a shaky voice. You don't know why, but you are terrified. This is the most scared you've been in your entire life. You don't recognize us? Us? You feel a hand on your shoulder. You know someone is there, but you can't look. You can't explain it, but you know that if you see their face, something terrible will happen. You can only see the hand out of the corner of your eye. It doesn't make sense, but the hand gripping your shoulder is yours. Please, just tell me what's happening. You start to cry, begging them for answers. Your shoulder starts to hurt, the hand gripping it tighter and tighter. The nails on the hand are chipping and breaking under the pressure while they dig into your skin. We just want to keep you safe, the voice says. Why don't you go back to your room and enjoy your dinner? The hand isn't there anymore, and the voice goes away. Your shoulder hurts worse than ever before and starts throbbing in pain. With nothing left to do here, you start to head back to your cell. You hear the footsteps behind you, one foot dragging, same as before, except this time you can't look back. You know that if you do, you'll be in trouble. You know that if you turn around and see what's behind you, everything will get worse. You arrive at your cell. There's a phone in there now, along with a lamp and a nightstand. You walk into the room. You hear the voice behind you say, "Lights out! Good night!" It was the same voice as over the phone, but it sounded raspier, like they hadn't drank water in years. The cell door slams shut behind you. The clock falls from the wall from the force of the door slamming shut. You turn around to see if you can open the door and only see a wall with a window. You look through the window and are met with your own face staring back at you. You step back in horror, but the face doesn't move. They watch you as you move around your cell. You try to scream, but nothing comes out, not even a whisper. You desperately try to say something, anything, but you can't speak a word. You want to cry for your friends, but you can't remember their names, their faces, or anything. You can't remember anything from before the cell, but what you do know is that you haven't always been here. The gift from the hospital. I know I saw it, honey. I'm not crazy, Meredith said while laying on the hospital bed. Her water broke just an hour ago, and now they were waiting for the contractions to start. My dear, I know small hospitals have a spooky atmosphere, but I swear that's all it is. If you want me to, I can go and check, though, Daniel said, speaking in the most comforting voice he could manage. They were meant to spend this last stretch of the third trimester with her mother before giving birth in the same hospital she was born in. But the water broke on the way, and they ended up in a small hospital in a town they thought they would just pass by. Daniel, still a little upset about how rude the nurses were, trying to shoo them away because they were at capacity. Not a soul in this hospital other than the ones working here. Lazy-ass nurses didn't think they had to work tonight, Daniel thought to himself. No, please don't leave me. Even if it's just my imagination, it freaked me out enough that I don't want to be alone right now. They looked into each other's eyes for the briefest of moments before she lurched forward in sudden pain. Oh, fuck, it's starting! She barely managed to get out before the husband ran to get the nurse. And the moment he was gone, another surge of pain hit her. She heard labor was going to suck, but nothing really could have prepared her. Alone in the room, she screams to herself, but not from pain. There was something at the window. A pale, white, obese creature. Razor-sharp teeth and dark circles for eyes with two horrid yellow pupils focused on her belly. Its mouth dripping with blood that has stained its body. Her dear husband running right past the thing, not seeming to notice. A nurse tailing just behind him. The creature grabs the nurse by the arm and whispers into her ear before letting her go. The nurse enters the room with a somber look on her face and says, "All right, Let's get this done. An hour of pushing and screaming did little to distract Meredith. She might be in incredible pain, but every time she opened her eyes, she would see this thing on the other side of the glass, watching her. Not even looking directly at her, just staring at her belly. Through short, ragged breaths, she kept trying to tell her husband about what was there, but she could barely get any words out. She jutted out her hand to point, but he just grabbed it to hold onto her hand, clearly misinterpreting what she was trying to communicate. Finally, the struggle ends and her daughter is born. Exhausted and delirious, she falls asleep as they cut the umbilical cord. She awakes 2 hours later to the blurry sight of her husband holding their daughter. Forgetting what made her stressed for just a moment when she laid eyes on her daughter. For a beautiful, blissful moment, the two of them sat there, just enjoying the miracle of life. But no good moments last forever, and out of the corner of her eye she noticed another being looking at her daughter. The vile thing she saw earlier was still standing there, staring intently at her child. The nurse from earlier came in right as Meredith started to panic again. Walking slowly up to the side of the bed, the nurse turned her head up to the new mother and said solemnly, "I'm so sorry, but it chose you." Confessions of the Innocent. The following is a word-for-word documentation of an interview Officer Parker conducted last week before he disappeared. We are reviewing this tape to see if we can learn anything about what happened to Officer Parker, as we suspect there might be some correlation between his last interview and his disappearance. Officer Parker was interviewing a man who had turned himself in for a crime we hadn't been aware of, and he refused to give more details until this interview. He also refused to take off his red contacts, insisting he couldn't. Mr. Taylor sometimes spoke in foreign languages, so anything in parentheses has been translated. End note. Beginning of interview. My name is Officer Parker. Today's date is November 17th, 2019, and I have here with me Mr. Scott Taylor. Now, Mr. Taylor, can you please do me a favor and confirm that you are aware you are being recorded? I am aware, sir. Excellent. And do we have your permission to record this, sir? I've told you several times that this is a bad idea. No one should hear what I have to say, but I know you will record anyways. You have my permission so long as I can say one thing, sir. And what might that be, Mr. Taylor? If you are listening to this, or even if you are reading it, please stop. Get away from these words and just stop. I know you are listening to this and thinking you're fine, and that I don't know, but I do know, and you are not fine. Okay, Mr. Taylor. Now that you have your warning out there, may I ask what makes me the exception to this? I'm going to hear this just as much as anyone else might. I have to tell you, you won't get it unless I start from the beginning. Okay, Mr. Taylor. Please take me through the events that led you to walk into this building confessing to a crime you wouldn't tell us about. I am guilty, officer, and I understand why this is odd, but let me start over from the beginning. 20 days ago, I found an old book in an antique store. I frequent this store very often, as I love to collect old books and restore them or document what they said if they can't be restored. Alright, Mr. Taylor, is this relevant to the crime you're confessing to? In Korean, he said, "You ignorant idiot. Why else would I be telling you?" Mr. Taylor, I don't understand you. If you can, please keep your statements in English. I'm sorry, sir. I don't know why, but that happens from time to time. In Indonesian, I can't tell when I'm speaking another language until the sentence ends. I'm sorry, that was Indonesian, for I can't tell when I'm doing it. Alright, well, please continue your story. So I found this old book, right? It clearly used to be brown, but it is almost black now. The years took its toll on it. Looking through, it almost seems like an old religious book. but it seems like it's focusing more on the creatures worshipped. Unlike a book like the Bible, this seemed like an instructional book. Diagrams on how to construct altars, and what looked like lists of some kind. The problem is, it's in a language I didn't know. It looked like wingdings. Every letter was a symbol. Perhaps it's Egyptian? They're known for writing like that. You certainly figured it out faster than I did. I went to buy the book, but the shopkeeper said it wasn't one of his. Sometimes people donate old books, but he always marks them so we can tell. I asked if I could just take it, and he said yes. In another language, he said, "I wish I hadn't." "Mr. Taylor, you're doing it again. What language was that?" "Lahu. It's spoken in China." "It says here you're a gardener. Why do you know so many languages?" "I don't." The tape goes silent for several minutes. It doesn't stop, it isn't corrupted, but it seems as though nothing was said for 18 minutes. But when the tape starts playing again, it seems as though they were speaking the entire time. If you run the audio through a visualizer, where you would normally see audio waves, instead you see what almost appears to be a video feed of the interview, but from Mr. Taylor's point of view. Considering that Mr. Taylor is the one who starts talking when the audio picks up again, it would seem he was talking about a god. I can't stress enough how fascinating this was to learn. The process of translating it was purposely made to be difficult, and it would seem like they weren't a native to Egypt or its language, but this god that he describes and its birth was the single most fascinating thing I had ever heard. I'll admit that the story you weave of the birth of a new god is interesting. But gods aren't born or made, they always are. What you were describing would be a demigod, or maybe something else. He isn't a typical god. He can be killed, and he isn't all-powerful. Mr. Taylor, this is a genuinely very interesting conversation. But you walked in here saying you were guilty of a crime. You refused to give any details, and you seem to be done talking about it now. I am getting to that. Trust me, it is all relevant. This was seemingly a manifestation of a god from the psychosis of a madman. In truth, gods are created. They are created by our belief, and are manifested into reality, and then stop existing when there is no one left who believes in them. But normally, it takes hundreds of people to even begin this process, whereas this seemed to be the manifestation from the psychosis of one madman, whose psychosis was so badly broken that this man alone had the cognitive capacity of hundreds. The god made from this would normally die when the man who made it died, as he was the only one to believe it. But that wasn't the case. When tape goes silent for the name was near death, the god entered a state of half-life, not quite alive, not quite dead. How do you know all of this, sir? What you were speaking of is the stuff of legends, not something to be said casually as if in fact. In addition, I have to stress again, nothing you've said is a crime. Tell me right now what crime you've committed before we continue, or I will fine you for wasting police resources and time. It is noted that many of the people who knew Officer Parker would be shocked to hear him snap like this. He was extraordinarily patient, and had himself an interest in mythology. There was no reason for him to snap at Mr. Taylor. The crime I've committed? Look into the mirror, Officer Parker. The next minute or so is filled with incoherent screaming. None of the officers on duty heard anything despite some being just outside the door. Based on some of the noises and Mr. Taylor's reaction, Officer Parker drew his weapon. Why are my eyes red? Look at me, Scott, and tell me how you made my fucking eyes red. Please put the gun down, sir. That won't do you any good. Is that a threat? You can't threaten an officer of the law. I may not know what you've done to me, but whatever you did to me can't be legal. Correct, Officer Parker. What I've done to you isn't legal. What I've done is, I've killed you. Your body will become a host, just like mine is. The next sentence is not in English. Nothing you said can stop it, and nothing you say will convince him. Why the fuck did I just understand that? I don't speak Hindi. Correct, you don't, but Alucard does. He speaks through you as he does me. All you need to hear is his story, and he can live through you. I'm sorry, Officer Parker, but your time has come. Tape ends. The smile. You sit alone on the train home. Well, not truly alone. Not really. Around you are many people whose faces you don't know, and people you've never seen. Or maybe you've seen them hundreds of times on days like this, and you've just never noticed. Today is different, though. Today you see someone you know you've never seen before. A tall man in a white suit and a large mustache. He wears a top hat, and his skin is paler than you're used to. Nothing about him is unnatural, just aggressively not normal. He sits across from you on the train. No one else seems to look at him, despite his pinstripe suit being the most expensive-looking thing on this train. However, you can't take your eyes off this man. He looks up at you and says, "It's rude to stare, don't you know?" I was intrigued by your look. Not in a bad way, just observing. I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable. Upon hearing this, he lets out a chuckle. So polite for one of your age. I'm surprised. If you look to the media, they'd tell you that you're all punks looking to destroy the elderly. Though if you ask me, the elderly could do with a bit of destroying. You chuckle along with him, surprised at how casual this conversation seems to be. There's something about the way he speaks that makes you uncomfortable, but his words sound like that of an ally. In the back of your head, you imagine this man is probably pretty alright. May I ask you a simple question? Not sure how to respond, you say, sure. Tell me, what is your bliss? The last syllable triggered something strange in your brain, and now all you could hear was your conversation and your thoughts. The sounds of the train die out immediately, and you only hear your panicked thoughts. You aren't sure what happened, but this is triggering a panic attack, and you just want to go home. He stares at you, smiling for a moment, and you notice his smile has too many teeth. You start to notice just how odd he looks. What seemed to be a tallish man is actually towering at 9 feet tall. His skin isn't white like you thought, it's as white as paper. His smile grows wider, growing up past his cheekbones and well past his mustache. I asked you a question. What is your bliss? What would bring you joy? You look around for help, desperately wanting to see anyone who looks like they'd help you, and you notice it. Your heart sinks, and your brain spirals when you notice. You are alone on the train. There is no one else here, and the train has stopped. It is just you and the man. The question is simple enough, but the scenario surrounding it is telling every fiber in your being that you should scream and run away, but you can't. You check your phone and you see a text from your friend Zoe. Text me when you get back home, okay? Call the cops, please. I don't have time to explain it. Just please call the cops. Tell them someone needs help on the blue line. You're scaring me. What's going on? Please just call the cops, okay? Alright, I'll give them a call, but I don't know how much help they'll be. Can you tell me what's going on? I'll explain later, okay? Can you tell me what your bliss is? You look at the phone in disbelief. All of a sudden, all of your contacts start texting you. each one asking the same question. What is your bliss? You throw the phone down, convinced you are losing your mind. You know you are truly alone. No one is here for you, and you have to face the smile. You look up at him to make eye contact, only to see that his face does not have eyes anymore. The only features on his head are his mustache and his hideous smile. You look at where his eyes used to be, mustering all the strength inside you to look brave. Why do you want to know? I only wish to bring joy to those around me. I can make your bliss a reality, but not for free. Before we speak of price, I must know, what is your bliss? You feel something grab hold of your mind, and you feel compelled to answer truthfully. You don't have to say anything specific, but you can feel that you are barred from lying or stalling any further. Companionship. My partner, my friends, and my cat are what makes me happy. You feel your mind freed from the lock that it was in, and you can speak freely again. But I already have all that, so there's nothing you can offer me. His smile widens. Nothing, you say? Never say never, darling. I can do more than you think I can. How would you like to look any way you want? You could shape your looks like clay and be whoever you want on any day. How would you like to keep your companionship forever? You and yours can sleep well knowing that nothing will ever end your friendships. Your cat will never get sick, and you will be married for life. All of these I can do, and all I ask for is a $1. This is the sketchiest deal you can imagine. Something so obviously incredible and tailor-made to tempt you, but only for $1? There is no way this is legit. There is no way. I need to think about this, please. He nods, and when you blink, he is gone. The train is moving, and everything is back to normal. It seems as though time froze, but when you retrieve your phone from the floor, you can see the last message you received was from your partner. What is your bliss? The timestamp tells you this was 8 minutes ago, and you realize it was all real. You break down and try to come to terms with everything that just happened. The train stops, and you realize your stop is the next one. You need to get your shit together and go. Run, and hope he is somehow tied to the train. Maybe if you never ride the blue line again, you'll never see him again. 30 minutes later, and you are home. You desperately want comfort. You know your partner won't be home for a few hours, so you seek out your cat. They are sleeping in their usual spot, and you pick them up, giving them a tight squeeze and hug. Then you aren't hugging anything. They vanish, and you feel a presence in your home. You turn and see the crooked smile standing in your apartment. The apartment is warping in odd shapes, just so he can stand straight without breaking anything. I hope you've had time to consider my offer, my dear. You feel composed. The comfort your cat gave you was enough, and you can still feel the warmth on you, so you know they are still there. You ask the man, "Why $1? That seems weird. What you are offering is incredible, but at such a low cost, I can't help but wonder what you could possibly have to gain from this." Gifts are treated with suspicion, but if you pay for them, it is a purchase, a transaction. So you feel better getting what you wanted if you feel you earned it. Why must a low price tag be met with suspicion? I want to know that everyone will be safe if I make this deal. I can promise that you and yours will not be harmed, nor will any of your friends or loved ones. You know you shouldn't take this deal. But what if everything is fine? What if he is the real deal and there really isn't a catch? Obviously, you know that things seem too good to be true often are, but what if this one time everything is fine? Will this be a moment you regret forever? Never knowing if it was going to be fine? What if your friends get hurt or your cat gets cancer and you have to know that you could have prevented it by just taking this one deal? You reach into your pocket and take out $1. His smile widens, wider than you could ever imagine. The dollar and him disappear. All of a sudden, your cat is back. But not just that, all of your friends are here. Everyone. But they are frozen in place, stuck, smiling, and just standing there, unable to move, their eyes darting around, panicking. A ring appears on both you and your partner's fingers. They lock in tight, and you can tell it's too tight on them. Yours doesn't hurt, though. You reach out to help, and your finger falls off. You realize you have become a clay-like substance. The instant you try to move, that part falls off. You can shape and mold the finger back on, but your fingers ooze through your palm and drop onto the floor, and you can't help but become a sentient mass of clay on the ground, only able to watch as all your friends panic, internally trapped within their own bodies, watching your partner trapped and in pain because of the ring. Slowly, over time, you watch your cat run out of food. They look for you, but can't find you, and after a while, their wails call the attention of animal control. Your cat is taken away, unable to die, and trapped in a perpetual cycle of outliving everyone they care for as you sit unable to move from your apartment floor. This is what you wanted, isn't it? What happened to Jackson? Jackson was a curious kid. He would pour weeks of his life into a single topic if it interested him. His parents thought he might be on the spectrum due to his social behaviors and his hyperfixation tendencies. When he was just 12, he got into a fight when his class went on a field trip to the aquarium, and he didn't want to leave the seahorse exhibit. He had read that they could reproduce asexually, and he was convinced that if he waited and watched, he'd get to see it happen. When the class was leaving, they sent a student to go get Jackson from the seahorse exhibit, and apparently it escalated into a fight between them as the student tried to drag Jackson away. For the next week after the incident, Jackson stayed in his room, researching seahorses. By the time he was done, he had written a 40-page essay on them. His parents were clearly impressed, and while it wasn't going to win any awards, it showed that Jackson had great potential when he focused on something he was profoundly interested in. When he got a bit older, and would have been entering high school, his parents pulled him out of school. They had begun to notice a worrying trend when it came to Jackson. While he was definitely smart, he was also a little gullible. He definitely understood the concept of lying, but never understood when people were doing it unless it was contradictory to what he already knew. For example, if his mother lied and said that she wasn't his mother, he would immediately recognize that as a lie. But if a kid at school told him Jackson owed him money for something, he would believe it without questioning it. His parents were quite worried that he would be hurt or be convinced to do something illegal because of this, so they pulled him out. Jackson was very frustrated about the whole thing. He felt like he was being treated as a child, and while he was 14, he felt he should be getting the same social experience as other kids his age. In truth, Jackson was correct, and his parents were making a mistake by pulling him out of school. Not only were they treating him as oblivious, they had also inadvertently caused what was to follow. Jackson started pouring his entire days into new hyperfixations. Essays on social constructs, on anthropology, on the study of lies, on human psychology, and more were being written in a matter of months. On his 15th birthday, he asked for a book he found online. His newest fascination was a derivative of a previous one. He wanted to look into the human emotion fear, but he started to look more into the fear of death. He had always had a little trouble when recognizing some emotions on people's faces, but the only one he never had trouble seeing was fear. He says it's something about the eyes that change when people are scared. The book he wanted wasn't one either of his parents had ever heard of. It was called Brain Dead. When our heart stops, our brains don't. Looking into it, it seemed to be a book from a man who had conducted interviews with those who had died and then were brought back. This seemed harmless enough, so they went ahead with it and managed to get him a copy. About a week after getting the book, Jackson acted very odd. He had regressed into being fully nonverbal. When he was young, his mother taught him Morse code since he would often slip into nonverbal states for a few days. Seeing him like this, she wanted to check up on him. Knocking on the door, she asked, "You okay?" She waited for a response and put her ear to the door to listen for a knock from his desk. Instead, she heard a faint whisper from a man she didn't recognize.
"Tell your mother you are fine, so we may continue your lesson."
Shortly after, she heard a knock. In Morse code, it spelled IHMOKEAYSORLRYP. This confused her a little. She knew he knew how to spell in Morse code, and it isn't like he could have accidentally put in those extra letters. Walking away concerned, she went to write down what he had said. She removed the letters that weren't part of the obvious message, which left her with, "I am okay, sorry." She had figured as much when he was saying it, but the letters he added spelled something out as well. Help. Rushing over to his room, she opened the door only to find it empty. Jackson wasn't there, and the room was very chilly. She started to panic and looked everywhere for a note or any clue as to what happened. In the printer, she noticed he had printed out his latest essay. She started to read through it for any clue as to what happened and was horrified to find the truth. Jackson had been speaking to the author of the book he had gotten. The author had killed himself shortly after writing it to experience the afterlife he had been told about, but discovered something far different from what he was told. When he died, he stayed trapped in his body, feeling the agonizing process of decay and rot in his body, and wasn't freed until they cremated him. While it only took about a week for it to happen, he said it felt like 7 years had passed during that time. He had written the book so that those who wanted to know what the afterlife was like could know, but now only wanted to have others know what he went through. He told Jackson that he needed his help and they could write a sequel together. Jackson's body was discovered 3 weeks later. He had a distinct look of fear and pain in his eyes. His mother discovered the body about a mile away. Coroners were confused as it seemed he had died 3 weeks ago, but that his body kept moving a little while until rigor mortis had taken full effect. It was concluded that the pained expression on his face had occurred after death. Jackson's mother knew all too well what had happened, and desperately demanded that they let her cremate her son. But since he was a medical anomaly, she was denied this offer. After much insisting, they finally handed her the ashes of her son, and she went to spread them near the aquarium. She was unaware that they were not his ashes, and that Jackson would be studied for years. And now time for the sneak peeks. The previews. The ooky spookies that aren't quite done yet. Now, some of the stories I've already read, I wrote years ago, but these upcoming ones, I wrote within the last year or two, some of which I've started writing within the last month, all of which I will finish eventually. Some of these are going to be like 10 chapters long, some might be a whole book, some might be a whole page. I don't know until I get there. But hey, here are the sneak peeks. College of the Unseen God. Journal Entry 1, January 14th, 2017. I finally got accepted into UGU, and the next opening starts February 1st. What's nice about this college is it's got openings every month. It's crazy that there wasn't a huge waiting line. With almost every field being taught here, you could become a doctor, a welder, an optometrist, a pilot, and numerous other fields, all taught up to PhD levels. Their campus is enormous, and I am baffled that there is such a low amount of people going to it. I start my first steps towards becoming a dentist the 1st of next month, and I couldn't be more excited. Moving to Pennsylvania will totally be worth the education. Entry 2, January 31st. Well, I'm all moved in. Met the guy who's going to be my dorm mate for the first time. Guy seems kind of off, but he's smart as shit. Meeting him was a bit strange because I swear he didn't make any sound when he walked in. He just kind of showed up. When I turned around, there was a 6'7" looking dude just sitting in the other bed reading. Never even heard the door open. But we talked, and while it's clear he doesn't get out much, he was super nice. Welcomed me to the college, introduced himself as Samuel. I asked if Sam was okay, and he said no. Fun guy. He's apparently been going here about 5 years now, and I asked what he was majoring in. He said he was just learning everything he could. Don't know what that's supposed to mean, but he went back to his book, so I left it at that. I start classes tomorrow, so I'm excited. Can't wait to meet my teacher. My schedule says I'm in the same room all day, which is a bit odd. They must run things differently here. I'm headed to bed. Apparently Samuel sleeps with his eyes open, so that'll be fun trying to sleep with his hollow-looking eyes focused on me. Entry 3, February 1st, 9:03 a.m. I woke up very early today. Normally I would wait until the end of the day to write my journal entry, but someone told me something, and I have to write it down before I forget. They say there was a student who used to go here, a young man whose legs were atrophied and useless, and he had to use a wheelchair. He was supposedly changed by what he learned, and the knowledge changed him both physically and mentally. The knowledge corrupted his body and mind, and came out of his skull in the form of horns. It granted him legs, so he no longer needed his wheelchair, but he grew hairy legs with hooves instead. The legs he grew did not replace his old ones, so his old useless legs dangled from his body until he cut them off with an axe he got from a local farm. He screamed in pain only to realize that his voice had been taken, and he could only speak in a voice that hurts to hear. Sometimes in the forest you can hear the echo of the goat man's guttural scream, but only if you venture into the woods. But they say to be careful, for an echo requires a scream, and he may still be there, screaming at the students who walk into the woods, warning them in an unintelligible voice not to learn what he learned, to leave before they could be ruined. Reportedly, only students can hear it. But what is a warning to those who can't hear it? Spooky shit, right? I love cryptids and local legend, and this is definitely the craziest one I've heard. Excited to get to my first class today. I'll write in later to let you know how it goes. Entry 4, February 1st, 11:58 p.m. Why can't these voices leave my head? Why can't these voices leave my head? Please, oh God, I can't sleep. It's a nightmare. Jesus Christ, I can't breathe. I can only hear wriggling in my skull. Why is there so much yellow? Why, God? Why is everything yellow? That's the end of that one. Don't go into the woods alone. December 1983. A hunting party goes into the woods to track down a deer that isn't native to this region. The locals insist that it looks like a deer from here, but it isn't normal, and they want it gone. They inform the party of 3 that you can tell the deer apart from the others by its rippling skin. They say it's subtle, but you can see the skin shift and move without the wind. The party is made up of Mike, 35, his best friend, John, 29, and John's son, Alexander, 14. 6 days pass as they hunt in the woods. The first 3 were spent setting up cameras throughout the woods, and the rest were spent hunting. They've killed a few deer, but none were the weird one. Everyone insists that the party would know when they got the right one. It's the night of the 6th day when Alexander decides to go for a walk. The video doesn't show why, but we can speculate he was bored. He walked for about 15 minutes, and when he turned around, the trail was gone. In the video, it looks as though it was slowly fading away as he walked away from camp. In the dark, he spots a deer. The night vision shows the deer was standing over the corpse of several small creatures. All Alexander brought with him was a flashlight and a can of bear mace. He pointed his flashlight at the deer to see if it was the one they'd been looking for, and in a calm voice, he attempted to soothe the creature. "Hey, buddy. Hey, it's okay." With the added light from his flashlight, the camera clearly picked up that the deer had rippling skin. When he spoke, the deer lurched forward as if to vomit. Alexander jumped several feet back, incidentally dropping his bear mace, though future events would show that he didn't feel it fall. He did not realize he was now defenseless. The deer looked up at him. It made an awful gurgling noise as its entire body lurched forward with each attempt. Alexander moved towards the deer, seemingly concerned for its health. The deer lurched forward as its teeth fell out of its mouth. It turned towards Alexander and smiled with human teeth. "Hey, buddy." It spoke in a faint approximation of Alexander's voice. Alexander is visibly terrified and backed away so fast he slammed into a tree. Before he can get back up, the deer moved closer, getting right up to Alexander's face. The eyes fell out of the deer's head and onto Alexander's lap. Alexander reached for where he thought the bear mace was, and found nothing. New eyes, the same color as Alexander's, appeared in the deer's head as its hooves started to chip and crack and bleed. Alexander looked as though he were having a panic attack as he tried to get up and move away. The creature, masquerading as a deer, spoke in Anthony's voice. "Don't move." Its hoof split apart in a pulpy mess, revealing a bloody hand. That's the end of that story so far. The Struggle for Sun and Sunrise. Chapter 1. The Sun, the Father, and the West. This one's also uncompleted. Not even Chapter 1 is done yet. I only have a few paragraphs, but it will be like a 10-chapter Western horror. "Mr. Connors, please. Think of the example you're setting for your child. Surely you don't want them to grow up to be a robber, now do you?" The wealthy banker pleaded after finding himself at the wrong end of Jack Connor's revolver. "What I want my child to grow up to be is alive. Now maybe it's been a while since you have had to wonder where your next meal was coming from, but us simple folk don't rightly know if today is gonna be an eating day or a starving day. Now, I'd much rather you live and get back to your well-fed family, sir. But if you don't let go of that bag, that's going to be mighty hard to arrange." The banker reached for a small knife, desperate to cling to what he perceived to be valuable. The preceding gunshot startled but didn't overly surprise Jacob Connors, who was looking at a weird-looking corpse. A dead coyote laid before Jacob, whose guts were torn out. The guts were a strange blue and purple color, and they seemed to have burst with a force from the inside. "Must have eaten something that didn't agree with him," Jacob thought to himself, not quite getting how peculiar this was. Inside the guts, he noticed something shiny, and he reached for it. In his hand was a golden bracelet that had a green shimmer to it. The carvings on the side were as intricate as they were strange. Jacob couldn't read it, so he assumed it was in Spanish or something. There was something about the bracelet that really drew in his attention. He almost fell into a trance looking at it. Instinctively, he put it in his pocket, hoping to maybe surprise his dad with it as something to give to the fence. Eldritch P.I. The name is Jack Douglas. I find people, and very unfortunately, I tend to be found by people almost as frequently. About 7 years ago, I was tracking a man by the name of Olmsted. Tracking him down to a remote fishing village, I was about to text the client that the deal was off. I don't care for the ocean. When I spotted my man getting off a boat and being assaulted by one of the locals. When I rushed over, Olmsted pulled out a knife and slashed the throat of the lead inquisitor right as I was getting behind him. His blood covered my eyes, and I fell off the dock into a murky green water beneath. Whilst underwater, I rubbed my eyes clear of the blood and tried to swim up out of this disgusting muck. After a few moments, I realized something was off, and I opened my eyes. Despite all logic, I was not a few feet underwater right off a dock. I was instead deep, deep underwater, looking at a being that had to have been the size of a skyscraper. It started speaking language I couldn't possibly know, but I understood its words nonetheless. It was furious that I had killed its lead priest, and now thrusted his responsibilities onto me. And his abilities. An instant later, I found myself back in the murky water of the dock I had fallen off of, Olmsted's body floating next to me. Now, I don't know about you, but when a god of the ocean tells me to take the tasks of his lead priest, I don't fucking do it, and instead I avoid large bodies of water. Now, though, I have a few strange abilities, and I can't seem to shake the endless amounts of cosmic and aquatic beings that want my abilities given to someone who will use them for their intended purpose. 2 issues. 1, I have to die for the powers to leave me, and more importantly, 2, the end goal is the end of the world. So what this ancient water god actually gave me is a fucking job, and the job is to stop him. The call came around 4 p.m. I was sitting in my office awaiting 5, since that's when I can pretend like I worked a full day and didn't instead just sit at my desk all day reading while pretending I was a real detective. A voice as smooth as butter and deceiving as margarine was on the other end of the line. She sounded like she needed help as she spun a wonderful web of words. She asked me to find her husband, going on and on about how she is so worried about his safety. I fell for it, of course, because an out-of-work detective will overlook a lot of red flags for a paycheck, and doubly so when it's a woman paying. And that's everything. That is all of my completed and upcoming horror stories. Some of these I'm probably going to upload individually as unlisted videos so I can send them to my friends, but the bulk video is going to be this one. So please, if you like it, share it around, leave a like and a comment, tell me which one's your favorite of the ones that are done, and tell me which one you are the most excited about that I'm not done with yet. If you have any criticisms, constructive criticisms, please leave them in the comments. I'm more than happy to read them. Other than that, hope y'all have a wonderful day.